The country's power crisis has affected economic growth, with SARS projecting a loss of up to 60 billion rand. Despite government's promises that ending rolling blackouts in the country is an urgent matter, there's still no light at the end of this dark tunnel. Estimates show that power cuts will remain for the next 18 months or more. Do we have inspiring political leadership able to fix our ailing power utility? We ask, where are the leaders? Our reporter Heidi Giokos is tracking the story for us, and she joins me now live in studio. Heidi, I mean, Eskom alone, we've seen in terms of leadership there's been changes in the CEO, in the board, etc. We've had people acting in many positions, but still nothing.
Yes, certainly, and I think this is a massive crisis in itself, and it's obviously contributing and exacerbating what is happening at Eskom. If you don't have a solid structure when it comes to the board and to its executive, then what does it say about it dealing with the energy crisis? South Africans have been subjected to the worst kind of load shedding. Perhaps we could just take a look at what it's been like over the last couple of years when it comes to the chairmanship and how that has looked like. We've had a number of chairmans. If you look at what happened in 1997 to 2002, you had Rule Khoza, who was the chairman, and you had a number of chairmans throughout the years. You even had Makwana, who's currently the board chair at the moment. He has made a return. He also actually acted as a CEO, but we'll get to that point now. If you look at what happened in 2018 to 2020, sadly, we did lose Jabu Mabuza, who was the chairman of the Eskom board. At some point, he was also acting as the CEO because we didn't have a CEO at the time. So there seems to be quite a leadership crisis when it comes to Eskom, and there seems to be a leadership vacuum because you're not really seeing stability there. There was some sort of stability in the beginning with chairmen staying in that position for some time, but it seems as if they stay for about a year or so and then they resign. And that's the question. Why are they resigning? What is actually going on? Why can nobody stay in that position for a significant amount of time? Let's move over to where we actually have a look at Eskom CEO. So between 1985, Masego, and 2007, you had only 3 CEOs. That's a very long time. But it seems as though there was some kind of stability. And from 2007, things started rapidly changing, where we saw this instability. From 2007 to 2020, Eskom had about 13 CEOs, interim CEOs and acting CEOs. So you can see that there has been a lot of instability since about 2007, with 2 CEOs almost acting in the same year. This is an overview of how many CEOs we've had from about 2007, and as I mentioned, Makwana also making a return as Eskom CEO. So there seems to be a lot of confusion around why Eskom has had so many CEOs, but it also is very telling as to what exactly is going on around the executive positions at Eskom. If it looks like that there, then it's a clear reflection of our electricity crisis, because if you can't keep one CEO for a period of time, what actually happens? And we've left it at Andre de Ruyter because he was the last permanent CEO, and we do have Caleb Kasim, who is the acting CEO, but he is also the CFO. So that tells you in itself what exactly is going on at Eskom, and I think it speaks exactly to the leadership crisis that we have, Masego, because if you look at what's happening at Eskom with all these CEOs, how do you have 13 CEOs in less than 10 years at Eskom? It's very worrying, and it just explains to you exactly what is going on there. And then you look at our electricity crisis and you say, well, it's a given because of what's happening with our executives.
So what are leadership experts saying, Heidi? I mean, you mentioned 13 CEOs. It's a revolving door. Some of them are making a comeback and still making no changes. So what are, experts telling you in terms of what's really happening with the vacuum at Eskom, just very quickly?
I think it's a crisis, Masego, and as I mentioned, it really speaks to what's going on there. If you cannot stabilize your leadership and your executive and your board, it's going to have a massive impact on the electricity crisis, and that's exactly what we are seeing now. And there is a lot of panic for the Eskom board and the Department of Public Enterprises right now to appoint a permanent CEO. But who's going to touch that job, Masego, when you look at what's happening and the amounts of pressure that CEO will have to try and stabilize the grid? But let's listen to what Terry Bell had to say about the leadership crisis that we are facing at the moment.
talking about a crisis that's been building for 30 years. It was patently obvious 20 years ago, certainly, that we needed to do something about recreating power, of upgrading our power stations, looking forward to a new kind of power. This is the 21st century. We're not stuck in the middle of the 20th century anymore. Instead, when we came in the early 90s, people said we have too much power. There were deals done with aluminium smelters in Richards Bay, giving them dirt cheap power because we had so much cheap power. In fact, we did at the time, but the point was these were power stations that were coal-fired that were going to eventually run out their lifespan. And the point is no one did anything about maintaining them adequately. In the meantime, we had, and this is something that goes back not just to this particular period of non-racial parliamentary democracy, it goes back before, the idea of providing tenders to your friends and your relatives, etc. And gradually we ended up with this vast corrupt network where nothing was done. Now, I don't think that the power crisis is going to be resolved in any way soon, within the next 3 to 5 years at least. To pull in nuclear power, no. It will take ages to build, and we have other problems as well. To bring in power ships from Turkey would be disastrous and would also put us into further debt, and we already have debt we shouldn't have had in the first place. So I think we're in for a long, slow, hard slog and a very cold and dark winter, I fear.
All right, Heidi Giokos with that report.